Ethics is not about feeling righteous, but it is about choosing the least unjust path when all paths are unjust in the first place. Operating government has already established proportional responsibility as the core analytical frame for this debate. Suicide, as stated by Joseph, is a multi-causal and also a deeply complex act for the actor that has transpired on this. It does not arise from a single influence, a statement, or method. And Mr. Keating's contribution to the school environment was the promotion of independent thinking and self-advocacy, right? So that influence and isolation is not harmful, but his lack of knowledge to see that his teaching is not calibrated to the capacity or constraint of every student within that system is also a form of negligence as a teacher. We told you that Todd is still young, and we are still asserting right now that he will realize all of this once he grows up. That's the connection of this analysis. And this already waters down the guilt trip claim coming from opposition, because all proves that he may regret it. As what Joseph preempted, on both sides, there's regret. At least we have a future and are okay with your parents and teacher in school in the first place, and you're still following and still keeping your own individuality. I'm going to expand that later on. Problem: opposition cries for justice, but justice for what? Justice presupposes a clear wrongful act, a legally and morally attributable cause, and that remedy meaningfully addresses the harm that happens in the first place. None of this exists in the context. In the 1950s, there's no legal doctrine, statutory framework, or any basis for attributing liability for suicide through parental influence or educational encouragement. Well, that's the reason why Keating is just going to get kicked out of the school and not going to get sued in the first place. There's no mechanism by which refusing to sign the report produces accountability or any retribution or deterrence that opposition want. What opposition offers is not justice, but just a symbolic moral satisfaction for a long time for the actor. But the risk of all of those actions is just so permanent. It just happens in the long term. You're going to be detached from any realistic pathway if you listen to all of the rhetorics coming from opposition. Op is a lost cause. First push: should we confuse moral agency with moral impact for the actor? Opposition says that Todd is a moral agent and he wants to preserve his own teaching, the teaching of Keating and his individuality, and therefore we must refuse it. But, moral agency does not require maximal self-sacrifice when 1, the action does not alter the injustice, 2, the harm is certain, 3, the benefit is just symbolic. Let's take opposition by each level. First, the condition and probable fear of Todd is also experienced by other students. That's why, even if Todd refuses, the ability to coalesce is really, really minuscule in this case, due to the fact that people in the 1950s are really reluctant to rally against situations like this, and they all probably want to have their own life and want to succeed. They don't want to face their parents' retribution when they face the consequences of not signing the form. Second level, even if they do coalesce, again, few students will just opt into this. Few people that can risk their agency and create moral symbolism. The impact that they can rally is very, very small in comparison to the majority of people that signs it along with their parents and school environment, school authorities' action. Third level, even if the majority coalesce, again, the school still wants Keating to be kicked out regardless. At best, you created the noise, and that's nice, but the school authority still wants him out, and they're still going to find other ways to kick him out in the first place. Fourth, why not just ask yourself what Keating would do for these actors in the first place once they initiate this action, because it's going to be connected to the capacity or epistemic access of the actor. Keating will just simply dissuade them to do so. He's still your teacher. He still cares for the condition of his remaining student. Note, you should also realize that Keating, in the realistic lens, also feels guilt, and it's impossible for him to not blame himself to an extent. That's why this action, even if it's initiated, Keating will just rally against them. Joseph already clarified as a crucial point that opposition deliberately ignores. Mr. Keating's work is already complete. His role was never to dismantle the institution, but to plant intellectual and emotional tools within the students. That objective for the actor has already been achieved. The majority of the class has already internalized the lessons of independent thought and self-expression and personal agency, and they possess the capacity to apply those lessons responsibly within their own constraints. Keating's influence does not disappear with his removal. It persists through the students who are able to carry it forward, and you are going to have the capacity to carry it forward to other students when you still have the capacity to do so. You're still in that sphere, and you are not kicked out. You're not kicked out within those areas in the first place. A teacher does not demand repayment in the form of personal sacrifice, especially for a minor operating under coercion. Second, Todd, as an actor, has already extracted the full educational and personal benefit from Keating's mentorship. He already found his voice. He developed confidence and a form of self-identity that did not exist before. But signing the report does not erase those gains. individuality is not so fragile that it collapses upon this one simple act. This is analytically lazy. Individuals can still retain agency even when they choose a strategic compliance under threat because Todd's inner convictions, intellectual growth, and moral understanding remain intact regardless of whether his signature appears on the document produced by an institution acting in bad faith. Finally, the O framing coming from OO is just simply perverse. It implies that Todd bears a duty to absorb catastrophic harm in order to preserve Keating's moral image. Again, you are putting all of the build for your individuality into dust when you do this. You don't have any ability to apply those lectures and spread those lectures to other students when you're kicked out within those societies in the first place. Todd does not owe any martyrdom to Keating. Keating, if anything, would just simply reject it. So the opposition's framing is internally inconsistent because it is deeply dismissive of the actor capacity. Note, he is also grieving. He is also feeling regret at this moment. They speak as though Todd is going to be fully autonomous or moral agent capable of absorbing all of the possible harm when one, the school authority also kicks him out, and two, his parents also kicks him out. It's protected time. So the problem in this is that are you going to assure that Keating isn't also going to kill himself once he do this in the first place, knowing that he's also vulnerable, he's also grieving, and you will put a lot of problem to the actor without any beneficial cost at the end of the day. Second, this is not just a speculative or manipulative claim. It is a structural one in comparison to all of the rhetorics that came from OO with no incentive at all. Because Neil's suicide was not an isolated act of irrationality. It was the outcome of cumulative pressure. The pressure that will also exist for the actor once you do this in the first place. Opposition cannot simultaneously argue that the system is brutal enough to explain Neil's death, yet benign enough for Todd to withstand its full retaliatory force without severe harm. So, again, at the end of the speech, ethics is not just about keeping one's hand clean. Ethics is about reducing unjust harm in real condition. If refusing does not prevent Keating's dismissal, it does not exonerate him, does not challenge the institution, does not protect the future of the student, then the refusal is not resistance for the actor. You're just placing them in jeopardy.